What's going on, guys? It's DigiWatch TCG coming to you with another What Just Happened video. And what just happened is we got a ban list. And I'm not going to try to fake it or try to say like I haven't seen these cards before, because it's been a few days. And I'm really just here to have a discussion and talk about why these cards were hit, or like some of the thought process I think that went into it. And then what we could see some possible changes on the market. I'm not sure 100% yet on what we're going to see exactly. I have been looking up some prices, but I do want to take a look there and then consider what's going to happen to our meta moving forward. With that said, please like, subscribe, leave your thoughts below on what you'd like to see next. So starting things off, we're going to look down here. Now these are all in effect on November 11th, 2022, and really interesting that we got the hit before Japan did. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, December 1st is when they get theirs, and this is just going to transfer over to them as well. But this is, I think, the first time that we are actually taking the ban list hit first before they are. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But I find that really interesting. It's a little different than other metas in most cases. Usually, even in like games like Yu-Gi-Oh, you get like a ban list or an OCG ban list that comes out like maybe a month or two before ours hits, and usually is an indicator on what our meta could be. Of course, metas are different from where you are. So, with that said, that's just like my thought on the November 11th. Now, looking at the first card, it's Calling from the Darkness. If you don't know what this does, basically, it is a bonkers card. One cost to play, purple card. And basically what it does is you delete one of your Digimon, then you can add two purple Digimon from your trash back to your hand. Now, the clause on this card actually also is that you can play this without a Digimon on field. You just need a purple color to match the option, because Part A does not need to resolve fully compared to Part B. That's usually how this card works. I don't think I'm mistaken on that. That's the way we, at least in my locals and regional levels, that I've been told it's worked. So the reason why they're kind of saying that this card should not be played is because of various loops that have occurred using this card. Now, putting it to one, I really don't think was a huge hit to many of the decks, because as far as I know, and this again, I'm only relating this to more regional levels of people who have topped, as well as locals or championships I've been to, who play purple, is usually you're not going past two. That's like, there are probably a few people who play three, maybe even four copies of Calling from the Darkness, but I've really never even seen more than one. I've actually been playing at one for the last couple of metas. And right now I'm playing Minerva Loop, and I only run one copy of Calling before the ban list, so I was a little surprised that this was even like consideration. I would honestly, if I was going to try to make any kind of attempt to change it, maybe I would just keep this at banned, or I guess one is fine, but really I don't think this is going to change too much in any of the purple decks. So in terms of like what prices, well, this card did inflate quite a bit for the pre-release one. It's the only foil printing of it, the pre-release. So you could see that kind of drop down a little bit, because not everyone's going to be trying to hold on to multiple copies. They're trying to sell them off. So if you are keeping an eye on this, I'd wait a few weeks and then take a look on it and see if it's dropping below 20, maybe $15, and pick it up when it's around there. In terms of what this will affect, well, I don't think this is going to affect much. I think Minerva Loop, like I said, doesn't necessarily play multiple copies. They actually play a different card, surprisingly, that has a very similar wording to this, so it works kind of the same. And so I don't think this is going to be huge. Now, going into our next card here, this is, I kind of say I understand the pro and con to hitting this card, but I'll say what it does, and then I'll explain I'll say what they're saying, and then I'm going to talk about the implications. So this card is Sunrise Buster. It's a yellow red card, and it's 5 to play. And what it says is you can play this card, and you can play one Tamer from your hand. And then when you do, then you are able to minus 3,000 to one of your opponent's Digimon for every yellow and red tamer you have in play. So the reason why they say this is therefore the card's output of this effect is greater than intended for some decks. And so what I think, here's how I see this card, and this could be, obviously there's multiple ways of looking at it, but you see a value here. So you say it's 5 to play, and you have to have yellow red, which is not that hard to do in a couple of different decks, which I'll talk about in a minute. But let's say you're playing the red yellow hybrids with main mode. Well, first off, main mode can just activate this, and you could activate it twice technically from your hand, and then put the top of your security using main mode's effect, of course. But let's just say you didn't have main mode and you play this straight out. Well, if you play this, then you're playing a tamer. Now that tamer is, let's say, a memory tamer, which is usually 4 cost. So your value of this one card is actually of like 9 total value, or you could say 4 extra value from what the tamer's cost would normally be to play. Plus, it doesn't get rid of any play cost. So like all the play effects. So like the play effects can still take into effect. So that itself is really good, and a really easy way of building your board and being able to delete a really kind of like a really big Digimon. Now, let's say you're playing a deck like Shoutmon, and I'm going to try to be unbiased toward this because I'm not necessarily a huge Shoutmon fan, but when you play Sunrise Buster with the effect, which is easy to get a yellow and a red on the field, but you can also play this card from there, pay the 5, and you could play a yellow or red tamer, and if you do play like the yellow tamer, for example, you play a Digimon off of that. So not only are you playing Sunrise Buster to get rid of a Digimon on their side of the field, but you're also playing a tamer that's also going to play a Digimon. So you're playing 2 cards for the price of only playing 5, and that is a very powerful effect. So overall, when you play like something like I think Akari is her name, and from Akari you play Darulamon, then you have 5 plus 3 cost plus 4 costs to play. That's about a 12 value for that card. So it is a very powerful card. I mean, obviously there's things to consider as well. I would have been fine if they maybe put this to 2 first and saw how like effective it was, because then it's less likely you're going to draw it. I mean, Shoutmon does draw a lot, but it wouldn't have hit every single deck. And I feel like yellow hybrids and yellow hybrid decks really are just getting destroyed right now. I feel like every Banlist is just like Jet Sylphie, and then boom, Sunrise Buster. But I understand the pro. Like, it is a very powerful card to gain all that value off one card that could be even hit by security, so sometimes you won't even need to pay the 5. Or main mode, which basically plays it for free. And then additionally, you're going into other things like getting rid of big stacks. DP reducing is a very broken mechanic in the entire game of Digimon, that your opponent's Digimon dies not because of a deletion effect, but actually a game mechanic. So DP reduction is just a very powerful card, but it only affects one card. Now, if you could split it around, like say hit an entire board, then this card absolutely should be at 1. But it's hard to kind of go pro or against this one. Now, what I think this in terms of what this is going to do, well, I think that decks that play this, you're going to hit Yellow Hybrid, obviously. Yellow Hybrid, I don't think, is going to be a meta deck this format. Maybe Bandai looks at this and says, we don't want to make these like matches like very, very long. Or maybe it's just unhealthy for the game as well. But I feel like Yellow Hybrid is getting weaker and weaker, and so no one's essentially, we're going back to the BT9 meta, or even prior to BT9, where you could play Sunrise. You can't even play Sunrise Buster. So I'm not 100% certain that Yellow Hybrids were going to do anything, and honestly, this doesn't affect the Shoutmon deck too much. There is another card that obviously will, but we'll get to that in a second. So next up is the Dorugraemon. So we knew this was coming. We knew it was on the block, and I think that it absolutely, after like considering it for a few more like months and like just playing against the X antibody decks and different types of decks, I absolutely agree with this hit. I think it had to be hit to 1, and the reason for that, a lot of people may disagree, but having the ability to have multiple types of protection on it, DP, or deletion effects, so against red and yellow, it's pretty much going to be able to be unaffected, and then swing into your opponent's security. with your Alphamon, or your Alphamon Oryukin is just very powerful with no worries of being able to be deleted or DP reduced. Additionally, putting underneath the card for +1 security and attacking multiple times is just very powerful. Because keep in mind, like when you normally play Make Your Stack, you have your Doro Greymon in the stack, so right there you are getting that +1 security. And then if you place like another Doro Greymon based on his own effect, that's 2 security checks. And then if you have the Alphamon or Alphamon Oryukin, you're going to be doing 3 security checks. So you hit opponent's security, hit 3 set checks to their security. Because of the Oryukin effect, you can unsuspend and then attack again, which is going to do 3 more checks to their security. And then basically, because Oryukin can give you that extra 2 memory, you can grumble for game, you can play cards, you can just put your opponent at a disadvantage. Plus, sometimes your opponent can't really out a 16,000 DP Digimon. That is something that I've found is very, very strong. And I think that limiting Doro Gray to 1 had to be done. I'm not going to really spend too much more time on this. Now, do I think anything is going to change in this? I think X Antibody is no longer a tier 1 deck. I don't think it really was as much. It was kind of falling out of favor toward the end of BT9, start of BT10. And I think that right now it's probably at the end of 1.0 or maybe in the middle of 1.5. I don't know how you want to classify it. It's definitely not like a tier 1 anymore. I would say it's maybe tier 1.5 or top of tier 2. I think it still does things. I just think that people have to revise their deck and figure what they want to do with this deck. I still have mine completely built, and once this ban list takes effect, I definitely will take out the 3 Dorus. Maybe I'll put Greymon in, so Greymon can go up in price. I think that the Alphamons and Oryukins and even the Ghost, Ghost Alphamon will go down as well a little bit. Now, coming to our last card here, we have Shoutmon X4. Now, I somewhat agree with this, but I don't agree fully. And I'm again, just to point it out, I'm not a Cross Hearts or a Shoutmon player. I do kind of think that this is a really interesting hit, and I think I understand why, which I kind of agree with if you're looking at it like, the whole picture. But basically, this is what they say. They say, do the effect that allows you to reuse cards required for the end of the attack. Digicross. This card can be used for a string of repeated attacks at the low cost just by having multiple copies in one player's hand. And it's on play, lets you get advantage, giving a Cross Hearts deck an increased number of increased number of cards in the player's hand. So what they were talking about is this card has a lot of things. As you can see, there's a lot of writing on the card. Firstly, you get to save all of them to unsuspended Tamer. Secondly, you can draw 2 on play. Digicross really makes it only a 1 to play, plus it has Rush, Piercing, Draw 1, and minus 2,000 to all the security Digimon you're about to attack into. Additionally, if it dies, you save 2 parts of it, and it still does a good amount of checks. And if you have something like Tie out, it gives you +1 security, so this level 4 that you can play for 1 can be 2 checks and easily be able to go into 2 or 3 copies of it the same turn to be able to rush your opponent and get rid of all your opponent's security. Plus, all the Digimon in the deck can basically die and be played practically immediately after, because if they die, like a blocker, like a Ballistamon or a Dorulumon, all you need to do is play another Tamer and it hard plays them out. So that is something to keep in mind about this deck. Now, talking about Shoutmon 4, what do I think about the hit? Well, I think that it had to be done, but I could have seen this being semi-limited just as much as I see it being limited. I think Shoutmon has not had too much time to shine. We really only had about 3, maybe 2, almost like just 2 weeks of Shoutmon, and then we have maybe about another 2 weeks once we hit November. And for me, I'm not going to play the deck. I made the deck just to see how it plays and just be aware of it, but I don't think it's going to be hugely meta after the ban list. For one, You can, a lot of people have been picking up King's shoutmon King mode, because King mode can bring you, or King shoutmon, yeah, King mode I think it's called. You can add to hand your shoutmon X4 to your hand, and then you basically can recycle it over and over again. So what basically it does is, say you basically are playing this for three from your hand. It's so that you get back a piece, and you have to have that one extra memory to go into your shoutmon X4 to draw two to have all those effects again before passing turn. So it does make it much fair. And part of the reason I believe they hit this was mainly because in the Japanese format, this has been dominating for three straight formats: BT10, EX3, and BT11 until this ban list goes into effect for them. So they see it already as a very strong problem, and it's kind of like the same logic they kind of use, I guess, with the hybrid problem we had here, where blue was just, already almost two formats ahead, and being able to play and just keep winning and stunning, and they had to do something. And then Jet Sylphie, kind of the same thing. It was like a very strong deck. It went a little bit long, and then right before we got, I think, our EX2, they had to reduce it to one copy per Tommy and Jet Sylphie. So I do think that it was needed. I don't think they had to hit it to one. I think they could have probably done it to two, just as a test and saw where it was. And if it really still was a problem, they could have probably hit it again on another ban list in the future and just give him like cross two. But I think they just didn't want to deal with the problem and people complaining about it's it being so powerful and so consistent. Sometimes I've played the deck. I know that not all the time. It's not consistent all the time, but when you do get a really good board and when you know how to play the deck right, you are able to kind of set up your pieces really well, and it's really just one turn you need to be able to attack and win. So what do I think is going to happen to this deck? Well, the whole deck together, I think, is about a $35 to $40 value if you just buy like the bulk, the rares, and the one super rare you run in it, other than like maybe playing Death X and ties. Of course, those are like how you make the deck even better. But I do think that what they're going to essentially do now is the prices for those are going to stay the same, I think. I think the alternate arts for the Shout 5 and the King modes are going to go up because people are going to be starting to tech them in, see if Shoutmon is still a reliable deck. So people are jacking up the price right now. And what I would probably do is I'd wait till maybe a week or so, maybe test with some friends what your X4 deck is going to do, and just play it and see if it works. So, I mean, that would be what I do, and if it doesn't work, then you know that you probably much don't want to use it moving forward. And it's not, again, not a huge commitment. It's getting your deck is like practically the entire bulk of commons and uncommons from the set. So, that's what I was thinking of price. In terms of tier, I think Shoutmon now, I think this was probably the one of the healthier things to do for the game, because now when you say, what do you think is the best deck? Well, I think Grandis is definitely going to be a good deck. I've seen definitely some reports of Grandis doing really well as things like or Garurumon, so some of the BT9 stuff, and this might affect some things like Black War Greymon, because Black War Greymon was expected to be like that, kind of like the main counter to Shoutmon decks, just being able to delete tamers and stuff, but that might take a little bit of a back seat right now, even though we know we have future support coming out. I think it's going to be pretty much one of those ties where a bunch of different decks are kind of in the race, and we just have to watch for regionals. I know for me, the decks I'm going to practically be using competitively and locals and like high tier events are probably going to be like the Jessamon, Black Or Greymon, and Metal Garurumon, just because I've done the most reps with those. I was going to play yellow, and unfortunately, as I said before, yellow is probably not going to be doing much, and I might consider some Minerva. I have been testing it, and it does have a tough time against a few other decks, but I still think it's a very strong deck. So we'll definitely see what that does. But with that said, I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with these hits on the ban list? Do you think that would you have done anything better? Would you have semi-limited, or do you think that was absolutely necessary? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for guys for watching, and look out for future deck profiles. I'm going to be probably putting up a Blue Fair one later this week. This is my own take on it. I know I will say this, I've seen a few other deck profiles around, and I'm nowhere into like making these deck profiles the same way some of these other guys are. But I did build it quite a few weeks ago, and I just didn't have a time to shoot the video yet. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, and have a great one.